of guitar players out there think they're not talented enough to achieve speed and clarity across the fretboard. But that's not true. And look, it's not your fault for thinking of that. I mean, if you're anything like I was, you spent hours and hours trying over and over again to get that speed and that clarity like your guitar heroes. But no matter how much you practice, you just couldn't get it. Does that sound familiar? Because that's how it was for me. It's not because you're not talented enough. The real reason why you failed over and over is because you're most likely not doing the 3 things that turn average guitar players into gifted ones. So just give me a few minutes here and I'll prove it to you. And don't get me wrong, I'm not the fastest guitar player in the world. I know I'm not as good as some of those guys out there, but I will say that I made a big transformation. And what worked for me is what I'm about to tell you. We're gonna use a section from the solo from the beginning of the video. And we're gonna use this to demonstrate how to build speed and clarity in 4 daily steps. Step number 1 is mindset. Believe it or not, mindset is everything. It's literally everything when you're trying to get good at guitar, especially when you haven't got good in the past. Most likely the reason why you haven't got good in the past and why you've hit plateaus is because, I hate to break it to you, your lack of patience. You want the result right now. You want the result in a week. You see a guitar player on Instagram and it blows your mind and you're like, I just need to put in more time. Yeah, just put in more time, let's do it. And you wanna get that result like right now. And this is killing your progress. You need to cultivate more patience. You need to let go of timelines and this like expectation that it needs to come today, it needs to come this week, it needs to come by the end of the month. All of that, you need to let that go. Thing that you need to focus on is a daily win. That's it. Even if it's just getting better at a string transition, going from 3 notes here to 3 notes on the adjacent string, like getting that string transition clean. Because playing things and practicing things just chronically over and over at high speeds, obsessively just doing it over and over, the brain turns off and we're just doing things over and over again like that, that didn't work for us in the past. You need to understand that it is going to take time and that you don't know how long it's going to take. And you might have to shelf some stuff for a minute and then come back to it, that's fine. But I promise you, if you follow what I'm about to teach you, you will make breakthroughs with the stuff that you've been struggling with for your entire life on the guitar. All right, so the piece that we're going to be working with, and I'll throw the tabs up here as well, is so it's going to be a lot faster than that at full speed, but again, our goal right now isn't full speed. It isn't speed right off the bat. Which brings me to the second daily step, which is chunking. Specifically chunking with a metronome from click to click. Now, anytime I'm struggling with something, assuming I've already memorized this, I've already got a decent handle on it, the first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna put on a metronome at a very specific speed. And the speed I'm gonna put it at is the speed that things start to fall apart. Just start to fall apart. So I'm gonna go a lot slower than the actual full speed for a second, just to demonstrate what this looks like. So once I've found that edge of ability, right now I'm gonna be at like 134 beats per minute. Once I've found that speed that's the edge of my ability where things start to fall apart, I'm gonna start by just going from like the first click of the metronome to the second click. And for a lot, I've noticed over the years that a lot of people don't know how to do this because they don't understand subdivisions. They don't understand how 16th notes and sextuplets and triplets and dotted notes and things like that are split up between beats. And if you don't know how to do that, I would highly recommend doing that. But in the meantime, there's a hack that you can use. And if you're ever learning from tabs nowadays, from Ultimate Guitar or something, most all tabs, or Songster, most all tabs have the actual subdivisions underneath like you see on the screen here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you on screen real fast how this is subdivided and how you can do this with any solo that you're working on. Okay, so even if you don't understand how note values work and how to count subdivisions in between beats, here's an easy way to do it. Essentially on programs like Songster and Ultimate Guitar, and in this case SoundSlice, the music will show you the subdivisions and it will be divided up into chunks. So this is the first chunk here, This is the second chunk. You see how they're in chunks, they're in groupings. In this case, these are 16th notes, so they're groupings of 4 notes. So the clicks of the metronome or the downbeats land on the first note of each grouping. So this would be the first click, but it's a rest. And then this would be the second click, the third click of the metronome, the fourth click. Then it starts over. First, second, third. Now in some cases, like over here, this grouping right here, it happens after the click takes place right here. And if you don't understand how that works, it's really easy. If you have a paid subscription to something like Ultimate Guitar, all you have to do is you have to turn the speed down and turn the metronome on. In this case, we have the metronome on, and you can turn it way down and you can actually hear what notes land on clicks. Okay, so if we start here. Okay, so if you really are confused about what notes are landing on what clicks, you just have to slow it down in your program, whatever one you have, and you can really track very easily what notes land on clicks. And this will allow you to chunk from a very specific click and end on a very specific click, and then work within that frame and solve problems within that frame. All right, so now that we understand how this is subdivided, they're all 16th notes, but we're coming in on an and. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come in on this and I'm gonna end on that second click. Da, 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 da. And with the metronome, okay, now from there, I highly recommend you be able to do this, just add one click at a time so you can properly identify in between what clicks is it starting to fall apart. And this is where the biggest mistake happens with chunking. Is people, they know how to chunk, but they're not focusing on the right things or the appropriate thing when they do target a mistake in between very specific down clicks. So I'm gonna speed it way up just to demonstrate what it's gonna be like for me to be difficult. Okay, so that's already sloppy. And as I'm repeating it here, the important part about chunking is I'm noticing and I'm paying attention. I'm sort of taking myself out into third person, and I'm sort of trying to feel out what is it that's causing the mistake here. And there's not really too many mistakes up until this click. There's not too many mistakes, but it does feel tense and it does feel like I can work on synchronization. So from this click, the and, to that last click right there, that note, I would specifically target my relaxation in my right hand and work on synchronization there. Okay, so I keep going. That's the next click. You can see on the screen, that's where the next downbeat falls. So the thing that I need to work on here is synchronization and note clarity. So what I'll do is I'll go from that click to the last click, the first click to the last click, and I'll work on that. Specifically when I get to this, that climb right there, I'm losing clarity. It's like my left hand is out of sync with my right hand. Being this detailed about paying attention when you're chunking is really important to actually solve problems. And then really quickly, I know the other thing that's hard for me is when I go from that right there. And as you can see on the screen, that starts on an upbeat. It starts on an and. So what I can do is, instead of starting all the way from the beginning, this is the correct way to chunk. I'll zoom in on just that part. And this is why knowing exactly where things fall in line with your subdivisions is really important when you're chunking. Because instead of starting way back here, like that's the only place I can do it from, you have to be able to punch in. So I can punch in on an and or on an upbeat, and then end on that click right there. Okay, so now specifically here, and I'm going to talk about this at the end of the video, so hang tight. Here, this has to do with a pick slanting thing or a string transitioning thing. Because I'm going 3 strokes, 1, 2, 3, and I have to focus on the tip of my pick clearing this string, because I'm alternate picking, and then doing an upstroke here. So I have to clear this B string from here to here, and do 3 strokes, 1, 2, 3, and then I have to tilt my pick like this slightly to clear this string from this string to here. And that sort of movement can get really bouncy. So the main focus here on this specific section of chunking is going to be specifically making this clearing of the string from here to here and then back from here to here as small as possible, as economical and small as possible. So to summarize chunking, you have to be able to subdivide your solo with a metronome without using a play along or anything, just with the metronome, and this does take practice. Not only that, you have to be able to target exactly what the issue is when you're zooming in and chunking in specific spots like this. Focus, when it comes to fixing mistakes, that focus is your superpower. Again, most people, their brain turns off and they just sort of like obsessively repeat something at random speeds. We're not at a random speed, we're at the edge of our ability, solving problems while we're chunking. Okay, so the other thing that we're going to work on, I'm going to slow down the metronome with this, and you need to do this especially if you're having trouble with something, is hand isolation. So essentially the idea is this: how can I expect myself to play this if I can't do the right hand? And the best way to find out is if you can do the right hand clean, where you're not hitting unwanted strings, where you're making smooth string transitions, is to just isolate the right hand. And a lot of times you're going to have to go a lot slower than what you think is the edge of your ability, because the right hand oftentimes isn't as dialed in as you think, because the left hand is dictating what the right hand's doing. For some reason, the brain isn't sending a signal directly to the right hand a lot of times. The right hand is just following the left hand. So like, you can try it. Take anything that you know, cover the strings, and try playing exactly what the right hand does without the left hand. You'll probably stumble. So with alternate picking, we can slow down the speed from 165 to 130-ish, and we can just mute the strings. So that was the sequence. So I need to be able to do that and make every string transition clear. So that was the exact sequence that we're working on with just the right hand only, and that takes a minute to dial in. And if something's falling apart here, most likely it's because your pick is doing something wrong from one string transition to the next. So that's where you do the same thing. You just implement chunking, but with the right hand isolated. You solve the problem that's happening. Usually it's at a string transition point, like from there to there, or like from there to there. And you're going to zoom into that, chunk it out, right hand only, and you'll be amazed at how good your alternate picking gets if you isolate your right hand and work on this every day. Okay, the next daily step is going to be speed training. So assuming you have the sequence down and under your fingers, that you've been chunking, the thing that you need to do every day, that most people, they don't do this every day, or at least they don't do it tactically and strategically, is to train their fast twitch muscle fibers, just like an Olympic sprinter would train their fast twitch muscle fibers. So this is where you do want to push the speed past your ability, past the edge of your ability, and play fewer notes. So instead of the whole sequence, like 6 notes at first. And the point is just to train your fast twitch muscle fibers. It's not to be able to get the whole thing down at this speed. It's just every day to start getting your nervous system and your body ready for those high speeds. Even if you just do this on one single string, if like going from one string to the next at these top speeds is impossible, at least start training it on one single string first. So I'm starting out, as you can see, with one single string, and then I add another string if I start feeling comfortable. I don't want to add too much too soon. And it's okay to slow down your speed burst speed with the metronome. But the idea is just to start small on one single string and then compound a little bit at a time if you can at the end of your practice every day to build your fast twitch muscle fibers. It's going to take a lot longer to get to these higher speeds if you don't train speed every day. If you only just go from gradually slow to fast, you can get there, I think, but it's gonna take a lot longer. So daily speed training is another huge thing. And again, you have to remind yourself sometimes several times in a practice session that you want to get this now. Like you start feeling shame and guilt and like all this stuff that if you can't get it in today's practice session, you're a failure and you're suck and it's not meant to be and you just don't have it. It's not true. You just don't have the patience. You just haven't taken yourself out of the picture and seen that, hey, this is going to take time and it's going to compound in very small increments over time. And you have to remind yourself this as you're doing your speed training, as you're doing all these steps every day. So the last step, which is the harsh truth that nobody wants to hear, is you're probably not putting in enough time. And I get it. You have family, you have a career, you have all this stuff. You're not a 17-year-old kid anymore. You can't practice, hours and hours a day. But if you're being honest with yourself, dude, and I'm talking to myself here too, you have more time than you're saying you do. You're just not willing to sacrifice it. You're just not willing to sacrifice an extra 30 minutes of Netflix or whatever it is. And I know it sounds like some sort of motivational, like David Goggins bullshit, but it's true. It's like you need to sacrifice something if you actually want to get better, and you need to put in more time. Look, I'm not saying you have to practice 6 hours a day, but I am saying this. I've interviewed some of the best guitar players in the world. I've interviewed Jake Workman, like best flat picker ever. I've interviewed Andy Wood, I've interviewed John Petrucci, Baxty, Hildy, all these guys. And not one of them has said that they practiced only an hour a day. Most of them said that in their like prime of practicing, that they were practicing 4, 6 hours, 7 hours in the day sometimes. So I'm not saying you have to practice 6 hours a day, but you can practice a lot more than you're saying that you can. And that's the harsh truth. Lastly, in the video here, we did talk a little bit about string transitioning and angling and slanting your pick. And I will just say I won't do that in this video because it's a whole entire other video. But I will say this, it's probably one of the most crucial things you have to learn as a guitar player who wants to develop speed and clarity, and that is pick slanting. So if you're interested in learning an entire breakdown on pick slanting and how to alternate pick and string transition effectively, click this video right here.